All right. How's it going, everybody? All right. I'm going to try to bang this out again. I've actually tried recording this once earlier and it didn't go so well. So, hey, everyone. Jesse here, your race mechanic. It's been a while since I've done a video, and I wanted to talk about the ports on the back of the Ride 50 bottom bracket. This is a common topic that comes up, and so I wanted to hit a couple points and demystify some of the common misconceptions that I see out there. So hopefully this will help you out. Right off the bat, let's go ahead and start with what are we looking at. So on the table here, I've got two bottom brackets, the Ride 50, or you could say Evasion, but I'll break that down. On the left, we've got the original Ride 50 Evasion bottom bracket. It's kind of a dual terminology, and the reason why is because when Fazua first came out with this system, they labeled it Evasion, Fazua Evasion. However, in this category later on, they wanted to introduce some updates. So instead of calling it like Evasion Gen 2, they rebranded the product line as Ride 50. Later on, we would see the new version, Ride 60, come out. Now, Ride 60 is a complete different animal. It's not compatible with this at all. We're only going to be talking about Ride 50 in these bottom brackets today. But it was rebranded. So when we're talking about the Ride 50 system, we can be talking about Gen 2 BB, or we could be talking about the Evasion G1 Gen 1 bottom bracket. Okay, kind of call it either. If you compare the two, you can see some subtle differences. You can see the neck on the original is kind of just a straight line shape, where the new version has been cut out and machined out in a couple different areas. It is a little bit lighter. One of the other upgrades they did was they changed the ratchet. There's more teeth in the ratchet, so there's faster, quicker engagement when you begin to hit the pedals. It's going to react quicker. On the back of the bottom bracket, we've got the ports where we've got the speed sensor that plugs in. We've got the remote. So that remote either on the handlebar or top tube of the frame. That wire goes down the down tube and over this and plugs into the back here. That information, or all of the information from the bottom bracket, goes up these green wires and connects to the drive pack where the brain is. All the calculations and the assist that happens is in the drive pack. That's where it's happening. So really, the bottom bracket is the junction point for the sensors. That means we've got the speed sensor, which plugs in back here. We've got the torque sensor inside. We've got the cadence sensor. That information is being fed through some of these green wires to the drive pack so it can do the calculations and provide assist. And that obviously is all happening really quickly and rapidly. That's what makes this so awesome, is because you're getting real-time assistance. As soon as you hit that pedal, it's reacting. The front side here, the 6-pin connector, there's these little pins that connect to the drive pack, and you can see that this whole front connector is spring-loaded, and these are pretty tough springs. So when you put the drive pack in the frame, real tight connection right here. That means if you're mountain biking, you're hitting a lot of bumps and stuff, this is like, it's got a solid connection to the drive pack. There are some reasons maybe it's not doing that, but that would be not a normal issue. In any other normal circumstances, they're holding tight and there's no miscommunication between the two components. On the back side here, we've got the ports. Now, we see damage to these, and I'm going to talk about that, when and why there is damage to these ports. Before I do that, though, I'm going to show how there's a couple variations right off the bat. You can see there's a shield on the BBG2. Now, this shield is removable. Okay. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but how this mounts to your bike and in the frame might be different than the next brand. Fazua makes this part, it's up to the bike manufacturer, the frame manufacturer, on how they're going to do this. Are they going to add a cover to it? Are they going to leave the bottom of it fully exposed? How do they want to approach that? So I've seen some comments where someone's like, oh, like horrible design, they didn't do this. It's like, well, they made it with the open thought that it's up to the bike brand and how do they want to, either cover it or not. But even if they don't cover it, that's okay. Got a speed sensor here, and you can see here's the plug. There's a little rubber rubber gasket, and the ports on the back of the BB here, water, mud, all that. It's fine if it gets onto it and splashes up in here. That's not really a problem so much. It's if it gets inside these pins, which really should not happen if these are not broken and the gasket's in place and they haven't been tampered with. I'm going to plug this in, and you can see I can move this wire all around, right? That's fine. That's not going to hurt these ports, okay? What will hurt these ports is if you try to rotate this plug out. Let me pull this out and I'll show you close up, because inside here there's 4 pins. Those 4 pins, obviously if you try to rotate this plug out of there, you're going to break those pins, and you might even break the plastic housing of the port. On the plug, there's a little key, there's a little arrow, and that key must be aligned with the slot. Otherwise, this won't plug in. So either if you're forcing the plug in and it's not lined up properly, or while taking it out, you rotate it or spin it out, that will break it. So that's one of the things that I've seen that will cause damage to the port. The other thing is, let's say that a mechanic is working on the bottom bracket and they go to remove that. There's 4 bolts that mount this. There's 2 on this side and 2 on this side. When they remove that last bolt, the bottom bracket drops, falls out. And when that happens, sometimes I've seen these plugs get pulled out at a right angle and just break it right off, right? So, Fazua makes a couple different things. They make this shield, and that's what I'm going to refer to it as, is a shield. It does not provide any more integrity to the port. You can see there's only 2 clips, not 3. But I can show you here where I can either come over the top of the ports, or I can come from the side and just snap it into place, right? There we go. So this will protect these ports from mud, dirt, debris that might be splashing up on the underside of the BB, and that'll just keep it cleaner. But it doesn't provide any integrity to these ports. It's not going to reinforce them. It's not going to keep them from breaking. It's just going to be a shield that keeps it from getting dirt on there, okay? So that's an optional thing that you can get from Fazua, and just pop it right into place. If I were you and you did it, I would say maybe even try to sometimes you got to really get that one corner pushed in so it snaps in and stays tight. But if you need to, maybe consider a piece of tape or something else that might just kind of cover up this area. The wires that we have going over the top here, these green wires, as I said before, it's all the data coming from the bottom bracket. The bottom bracket is the junction point or the center point where all the sensors are. The green port here is the speed sensor, and it's a Hall sensor, which is like a magnetic proximity sensor. There's 4 pins in here. However, a Hall sensor only uses 3 wires. So that means that one of these pins is not being used. There could be a rare scenario where maybe one pin is broke, but your speed sensor still works. I guess, that's a possibility. I don't know how one pin would break, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's a possibility. The two black ports that we have here, they're actually interconnected. That means, like, if we were to say, okay, this pin and this, like if I said the left pin is ground, well, the left pin on this port as well is also ground, and they're actually linked. So when you plug in the remote, you could plug it into either of these two black ports and it's going to work the same. As I said earlier, Fazua has a 12-volt connector box that you can use that will plug into the third port, or either of the two, that is, and it will allow you to use the 12 volts from the system to power a peripheral like headlights, taillights. Maybe you've got a USB port or something like that you want to power. You can tap into that. There's also like the SRAM battery, wired battery for the wireless system, if that makes sense. Yes, if you have like the new Axis Grupo, you have just your rear derailleur battery, you can actually wire that into the e-bike system. You have to get that battery, wired battery from SRAM, but it is an option. So Fazua makes that connector box, and it's definitely an option to tap into that 12-volt system. However, that will also use the communication protocol in this. So if you have that 12-volt connector box, you would then use the remote to turn the 12 volts on and off, which means the Fazua system is the on-off switch. However, like an example with Supernova, they make a light and a connector for this, but it's just the connector. There's no communication protocol. It's just ground and 12 volts. Why? Because the on-off switch is on the light itself. So we don't need two switches if it's unnecessary. We just need the one. So depending on the light that you get, might determine if you need the 12-volt connector box or if you just need to tap into that 12-volt and ground. The 4 of these green wires here are the same 4 pins that we have in the 2 black ports. Okay. These black ports just make a U-turn and go up the green wires. They don't do anything inside of the bottom bracket. I'll show that here actually. So I've got one of the plates that came out of a BB, and you can see there's a broken port, and I think I unsoldered this, and I don't know, I was just playing around with it. But these 2 black ports, if you follow these leads around, they literally just go from here to here. They don't do anything else inside of this board. They just make a U-turn and go up the white connector. So when you're thinking about the remote and plugging into the back of the BB, it just makes a U-turn and goes up these green wires. That means that 4 of these pins on the face of this are just for the remote. So that would be ground, 12 volt, data high, data low, not specifically in that order, but you get what I'm saying. So the other 2 pins are going to utilize the data high, data low for the sensors inside the BB, and it's feeding that to the drive pack. That's going to be your cadence, the torque on the pedals, and the cadence. Say that right? Speed, cadence, torque. So those 3 pieces of information are feeding up through these here. The remote has a Bluetooth chip in it. I have a remote right here, and the Bluetooth chip is located in there. So, I mean, it's one thing to just communicate with the system and say, hey, go to mode 1, 2, or 3. But it's another where that whole communication protocol. So when you think of the remote, it's almost like a USB cable. It's not the same protocol, but anyhow, that's a way to kind of simplify it. The ports. So let's get back to the ports here. If you compare the 2, we've got BBG2, BBG1 or Evasion. And you'll notice that the ports on the BBG2 look different. And they do. They appear to look different. This is a misconception. Everyone will say, oh, the BBG2 has more reinforced ports. Well, it's not true. However, you might be surprised to see that this thing actually just pops right off. It is nothing like the shield that we have here, though. The shield will just barely clip onto 2 of the ports. It doesn't add any integrity, where the cover that we have on the BBG2 is, it has all 3, and it does add some integrity to the shape of the cylinders. And in that scenario where we talked about earlier, where maybe the wires get pulled from an angle and break the ports, this could reinforce and help that scenario. It also does provide a tongue that comes out and kind of helps protect the green wire. On the front end here, you can see how these are spring loaded. So these wires do move a little bit. Now, I've never seen enough abrasion that would cause an issue, and it's one of those things that may not happen in the first couple of years, but maybe with a really old bike, there could be some spots where there's abrasion, and now we've worn it down to bare wire, and now you're having some electronic issue from that. So that's a possibility, but just be aware that, yeah, that's moving, these moves. So that little tongue that comes off of this just kind of helps cover that. The cover, or this little plate, it would fit onto the BBG1 or the Evasion, like so. That's fine. However, Fazua doesn't sell this part separately. And that makes sense, really. I mean, if you already have the BB Evasion mounted into the frame, your ports should be fine. Again, like you saw me plug it in and wiggle it around. The ports don't just break. They break from something causing it to break. Now, whether or not it was a smart idea to use these delicate ports is another conversation, but if they're used properly, they don't break. It's kind of that simple. So, unfortunately, yeah, this part will only come on a BBG2, but at least you know if you do purchase the new BBG2 that, bam, you've got that part. And then there's also another option, and that's this big shield that covers it. I'm going to move the BBG1 Evasion out of the way. And here we can see how this would actually screw onto. There we go. There's a couple screws on this side and one here that mounts this big shield. This shield is available for the BBG2. However, it depends on the frame and how this bottom bracket fits in the frame. You may not have the ability to use this shield because there's something else covering it. So it's kind of a this or that again scenario where, it's redundant to have 2 of the same thing there. But it's okay if it does fit. You can use this. One of the other things this does is plug in a speed sensor, pop this shield back in place, and you can see where the wire comes out of this little pocket. If a mechanic is like we kind of said earlier, they're servicing the BB, they've got 3 of the 4 bolts out, they're about to extract the final bolt, and this thing drops. If it does that, it's only going to pull this cable directly out in a straight line. It's not going to do and pull it from a right angle, because if we do that, that's where damage may occur. We might break it when we pull it from the side. But with the shield there, it's not possible to do that. So this will either allow the plug to just pop out like so, or it's going to hang without breaking the port. So it's another way that that Fazua remedied or fixed the issue with these delicate ports, and I think they did a good job with it. Honestly, it's I think it's kind of the best that you can do without fully changing this. Because if they change these plugs, then we've got to deal with compatibility on the remote and everything else, right? Hindsight's always 20/20. However, these ports again, as long as they're used correctly, damage is rare. All right, so let's do a quick recap. We've got this little cover that comes on the BBG2. You can't buy it separately. It's part of the BB. You've got a shield plate here, so if you have the older Evasion, you do have a way to maybe cover that up and help protect or just keep debris off of there. And then for the BBG2, of course, there's that other shield. So that's it, everyone. That's a breakdown on the ports on the back of the Fazua bottom bracket. And really, you know, if you have a broken one, how can you navigate this? One is you might be able to use the second port if it's not in use. If it's the speed sensor, you might be stuck there because there's only one port. However, if it's only one pin inside, it might be the one pin that's not being used. I have witnessed that only once, but again, that's a rare one by itself. This set of green wires and the connector on the top of the BB here is the same on both, and it is a replaceable part. These springs, every once in a while they can either break, or maybe the way the drive pack goes in, it bends this whole thing up, and I've seen that before where this whole plate gets like forced up and you can see that gap starting to be developed in between the two. And I've seen that where, you know, you shove that drive pack in and now this whole thing's been bent upwards, and in that case you would just want to replace this. Where the white connector is on the back here, there's a tab on the right side here. You don't have to pull very hard on these wires to get this white connector up, but you do need to press the tab. That's really the big thing of it all. If I try to pull on these wires right now, got no movement, but it only takes just a teeny bit of pressure on this side, and then this, the amount of effort you got to pull up when this clip is cleared, it's really easy, doesn't require a lot. So if you're tugging on these, that's a red flag. Try to get that tab pressed in, and then it will release a lot easier. I think that's all I have on these. If anyone has questions, of course, drop them down in comments. Let me know, and I'll try to answer what I can. If there's other topics around Fazua that maybe you have questions about, feel free to shoot them my way, and I'll see what I can do. So I'm your race mechanic. That's all we got for today.